So I wanted to take a moment to kind of cover my thoughts on differences between Lesta and World of Warships. Lesta being the kind of original makers of the game, and they make this game called Mir Korabley, which looks a lot like World of Warships, and then World of Warships, which split from Lesta when the Russian invasion of Ukraine happened in 2021. Since then, both games have kind of progressed along their own separate paths. Um, they look quite similar to each other, but have some pretty meaningful differences. Um, the first of which I think you just saw at the beginning here of my ship was already in motion at the start of the game. That was an update that happened very recently. I don't know if it's only in low tiers or not, but kind of ways to convince players to interact with each other more so than they would otherwise. You're not in reverse immediately, as some players are wont to do. But we'll start with the biggest thing that I think is covered a lot when people talk about, the differences between Mir Korabley and World of Warships, is that Mir Korabley has no aim bug. And I don't know the truth of that. I also don't know the truth of the aim bug itself. I've played World of Warships quite significantly over the past 4 years or so, putting about, 11,000 randoms games plus 1,000 each, maybe ranked and clan battles. And yes, it has definitely been noticeable over the past 4 years that the aiming system feels like it has gotten much worse. And that just seems to compound over time of the game feels a lot less snappy, a lot less consistent, a lot less fluid than it used to be. And that's kind of the biggest thing that I noticed the first time I started playing Lesta. So far I have about maybe 100, 120 games on Lesta. Is just, the biggest thing is aiming, and really everything feels smooth, feels faster, more consistent. The aiming system, the UI, usage, consumables, entering the armory in port, changing ships in port, changing camos, changing consumables, changing signals, sorry. All of those things feel so much smoother and more consistent on Lesta than they do on World of Warships. And I think that is kind of a clue as to what's going on with the aiming system, which I don't think there is a difference in how the game is doing the aiming itself, or doing what it thinks the player wants to aim at. But I do think the main difference is in how fast the game is running. I'm not sure if there's an engine difference between the two. I know World of Warships is running on a big world, right? I don't know if Lesta is not running on big world. It would surprise me if they had fully shifted engines in the time that they've split. But I think the Lesta game is just maybe better optimized, or it was kind of better taken care of from the start. That would make sense. They made the original game. It makes sense that they would have been able to maintain the original game better than World of Warships' developer base has been able to so far. And I think those differences are really what contributes to aim bug, which is the game is running more smoothly and more consistently on Lesta, and that consistency is what contributes to having a better aiming experience. Whenever you play World of Warships, you can see on the minimap there's a circular crosshair reticle that's moving around. That's where the game thinks that I'm aiming, and then where my crosshair is pointed is where I think I'm aiming. If those two things line up, you will hopefully have an accurate shot. If they don't line up, your shells probably were not going to. Your shells are going to go towards wherever that circle is on the minimap, wherever the game thinks you are aiming. And I think because the Lesta game is faster, that circle on the minimap is able to keep up with where you are aiming more consistently. In any video, I report this guy here out of anger. In any video you see or clip of someone decrying aim bug, you can almost always see that the icon, the reticle on the minimap, is not lined up with where that person is aiming, and it kind of bounces around a lot, and that's especially true if you're fighting someone who's stuck on an island or something. The World of Warships game is just slower. It feels slower. It feels less optimized. And I think that is what contributes to the aiming system feeling worse. The game is not able to kind of reconcile where it thinks you are aiming versus where you think you are aiming, just because it's not operating fast. I think that's what contributes to a lot of it. Another thing that I think Lesta is doing a bit better, it hasn't shown up yet in this game, but there are rewards for team play, and those rewards are very clear to the player. At some point later in this game, you'll see a ribbon that shows up that says took the hit or something like that, just to indicate that you took damage for your team, which is rewarded, at least it's recognized. It won't show up in this game either, but there's another ribbon for smoking up teammates, which, for good or for bad, is recognized. There's a more conscious effort by Lesta to recognize and reward team play, which I think World of Warships would strongly benefit from. Another thing, better UI elements. You might not have seen it just yet, but anytime I have a teammate who is spotted, their icon on the minimap will show up as, it'll show up with a yellow-orange outline. It also might show up if you're looking at them just in your gun view. But that's nice to know, information that's nice to know, especially if you don't play with mods. Here I'm not playing with mods. It's just nice that that's baked into the game. It's not something I have to worry about otherwise. And it just gives you a lot more information. Another thing is if you are contesting a cap against another ship, on World of Warships, you'll see that the icon changes from a square to a diamond, but here on Lesta, it'll do the same thing and also flash. So you get more information out of a lot of UI elements, which is nice. A big thing, I think this game is more, or I'll phrase it as, this game is less disrespectful of your time. World of Warships, anyone who's played for a long time would remember the Puerto Rico dockyard, which was a fiasco with that. They presented this idea of being able to achieve something for free, and the reality of it is that is really not the case. You have to spend an obscene number of hours, an obscene amount of effort, just to achieve something for free. And they fully expect you to pay a lot of money. Here I thought that Nova was going to come follow his teammate Omaha into sea, and I would be able to get a torpedo rush out of smoke. That was not the case, and I kind of suffer a little bit for it. But I think the took the hit icon shows up more here. But yeah, World of Warships is kind of remarkably disrespectful of your time. That's true with the early access events of we want to milk as much money out of the player base as possible. But let's take this ship that is going to be a tech tree anyway and offer it to you for money. They don't respect your money, they don't respect your time, they really don't respect you as a player when they introduce things like the Libertad, so the bots are more valuable than the humans are. Not to say that Lesta is very respectful of your time. They do small things like offer you a certain number of doubloons for playing per day. That seems like a tactic to coax players to play on the server, very obviously. But you can't deny that it's nice to have doubloons for playing the game on a daily basis. It's nice to earn things in a free-to-play game. By playing the game, you're trading your time for the game, right? You're trading your time for value in-game, which is nice. Another thing that I appreciate or have appreciated in Lesta's version of the game is time taken to polish old content. I don't know how many buffs. This will stick in my mind because the gearing was very recently buffed on Lesta's server, or it will be buffed soon. But I really don't know how much time Wargaming has taken to buff old ship lines, like, I don't know, the Hindenburg, the Zhao was buffed recently, but the gearing, I don't know, older ships like that, Z-52 even. Uh, there's not this focus on pumping out content as fast as possible with as many gimmicks as possible because they think that the player base's attention spans are so short that if there isn't a new ship every month, then people are going to leave and get upset. They recognize, oh, people do still play old ships. I think the Shimakaze is still by far and away the most played ship on all servers. I'm not saying that ship needs a buff, but people do enjoy old content. And so there's value in going back to polish old content, which I don't think Wargaming recognizes as much as they should. They do buff old content. The Zao is still a test ship after, I don't know, 9 years of its existence. But there's effort there to improve the player experience beyond introducing something super shiny, super new, super gimmicky every month, and that's nice to see. And the other nice thing to see is that those super new shiny ships on Lesta, so ships like the Lazvarev, Tiangong, Lynch, aren't grossly overpowered, or I think overpowered at all. Whereas ships like Libertad, Utrecht, Oregon, Vyazma, Metz, everything that came out in the most recent update, they're comedically overpowered. It's comical. You can run down any ship with the Oregon. You get there's no downside to using your burst fire within the burst fire range. You have insane accuracy. You have the speed of a Georgia. You have some of the best heals. I don't know if I don't know how many heals you get, but you get heals that recharge quickly and heal substantial amounts of health. It's like Wargaming doesn't even respect the game anymore. They don't respect the players. They don't respect anyone's time. But the game is it's purely, it feels like a mobile gacha game or something. We'll introduce something just to take as much money out of the wallets of the player as possible. And it feels bad. It feels weird. It's strange to see ships that are that overpowered entering the game alongside ships that have existed for 10 years now that aren't as overpowered, and it feels bad. The other thing is that I think Lesta is doing better is taking active steps to mitigate things that are really perceived and are, I think, objectively toxic, i.e. submarines and aircraft carriers, and other things that are kind of tied to this. I'll get into it in a moment. But you know, playing against submarines is not fun, and playing submarines themselves is generally not fun. Playing against CVs is just, you are suffering griefing. You are being griefed the entire time. I once got into an argument with a CV player where at the end of it he said, shouldn't it be the case that the CV should be stronger because there's one of them? At which point, you know, I got annoyed, but also like, I guess that's it. Like, there is only one CV, so maybe they should be stronger than everybody else, which it's bad. It feels bad, but I think that's what Wargaming's design intent is. Oh, we're gonna have one player that's just stronger than the other ones, and we'll limit it by having only one of them, which sucks to be the person suffering the focus of the CV and is really boring as a CV player to play. And so what steps has Wargaming taken to mitigate that over time? Well, we've been promised CV reworks, I don't know how many times over the past couple years. I feel like there's a new idea every now and then of, oh, maybe we'll implement minimap only spotting, or oh, we're going to have this weirdly convoluted mode where planes will go into recon mode or travel mode or attack mode and have different functionalities in each of those modes, blah, blah, blah. Where Lesta does a change kind of as simple as making your AA mounts invulnerable. They can still get knocked out, but you don't lose them over time. You don't become less effective or less able to counter CV attacks over the lifespan over the duration of the game that you're playing. The game doesn't get harder for you to play against aircraft carriers. Sure, you've lost health, yes, but your ability to attack airplanes, which is, you know, a computer fighting a computer. Your AA guns put up flag clouds. Your AA guns just do damage without you having to really do anything. Here I make the mistake of backing out of the cap like an idiot, but having your AA guns available over the duration of the game is such... It's a small change, but it makes such a huge difference. A huge positive difference for the player. As an aside, your modules are not randomized. I don't know why Wargaming made... well, they provided an explanation, which is, oh, well, we don't want you to lose all your modules at the same time if they have the same amount of HP. Which then just... you're benefited from the argument of, oh, don't make the argument, or don't make the modules permanently destructible anyway. You know, do what Lesta is doing and make the modules able to be incapacitated, but not able to be permanently destroyed. And that's true for, I think, all modules here. Main guns, torpedoes, secondary turrets, AA mounts. All of these things are able to be incapacitated, but not able to be permanently destroyed, which is a much better player experience. And then submarines themselves. Submarines have been tweaked kind of constantly, not constantly, but they've received a major tweak, I think, every year since their release. The most recent tweak being, oh, they can't shotgun you, but we're gonna make them so maneuverable that your ASW will never find them. Which is bad. That is one thing that Lesta does very badly at the moment, which is submarines can shotgun you and just trade you out one for one, which feels horrible. But that doesn't happen too often, hoping. And also, if you do find a submarine, they're not so insanely maneuverable that you cannot hit them with anything, which is nice. Another thing that Lesta does really poorly at the moment is mines, so minefields that are dropped by aircraft carriers. This was introduced on Wargaming briefly for some special game mode, maybe Halloween or something. On Lesta, the mines are not... the only way the mine gets destroyed is by blowing up on a ship. Here I got lucky that the Novo decided to rush me. I don't think they don't even need to go after me. They're up ahead on points if the Novo survived. But on Lesta, the mines, they're dropped, and then I think they have, what, a 2-minute, maybe 1-minute timer? For the entire duration of that timer, the only way that mine gets destroyed is if it touches the ship and explodes. So if your minefield gets dropped on you, you're essentially stuck for a while, which feels bad. And then I think the last thing that Lesta does differently is no airship escort in randoms, which, you know, for better or for worse. Here I'm staying in the cap because to win the game, the Saphir has to contest the cap for long enough such that the point differential is no longer double. We have 2 caps there. We're gaining points twice as quickly, so he just has to contest this cap and win. I don't even have the DPM, I don't think, to kill him if he surfaces. But airship escort, I think, receives a lot of flack just because, one, players don't understand kind of how to play the game mode. It requires a certain degree of aggression, a certain degree of restraint, more so than the typical random battles nature of, oh, we'll just kill everybody and see what happens. But you know, I'm not a huge fan of the mode, but it exists, kind of a small price to pay for other things. But yeah, I think all told, the Lesta experience is more, I don't know, pure to the game of World of Warships. It kind of reverts you back to that feeling of when you just started playing the game and the game was as simple as you have a ship, it has guns, it might have torpedoes, you're playing for these capture point objectives. The tools available to you are very clear. You click or you press another button and then you click again. And the game is simple. and the game is simpler here. The game is I don't think the game is that much better. The gameplay experience is really not that much better. Um, but the game is simple. Here we win by 4 points just by the skin of our teeth. Yeah, no, it's a substantial rant, I think, but it's just it's unfortunate that the games have gone down such separate paths, where one game is becoming kind of comedically crowded with gimmicks, and the other one is dying. I mean, I think this is true for all versions of the game. Um, oh, I did get one of those smoke-covered ribbons. So recognizing team play, sure, but the game is losing players. So, what are ways to mitigate that? I don't know. Probably being more respectful of the players playing the game, which I think Lesta is doing a better job of at the moment. Lesta is not perfect. This game, Mir Korabley, is not perfect. But I think it is in, at the moment, a marginally better state than World of Warships. Another tidbit, this guy I assume was a bot, but when I was playing this game, when I got to this final screen, it said deleted user, or like removed account, deleted account. So I think this guy got banned for botting instantly, which was funny. But those are some quick thoughts on World of Warships and Mir Korabley.